Her daughter-in-law slammed the door in her face 3 times. The 3rd time, Evelyn didn't knock again. She returned 2 weeks later, with her realtor. While they laughed inside, she signed away the house they thought was theirs. No warnings, no fights, just a legally airtight goodbye. And when the truth hit the deed, silence finally answered back. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The porch smelled of microwaved chicken nuggets and too sweet air freshener, a nauseating mix Shannon seemed to think masked the smell of chaos. I stood there, arms full with my usual lunch tray, just a turkey sandwich and a cold can of Diet Right, when the door snapped shut, hard, right in front of me. My foot hadn't even cleared the step. From inside, Shannon didn't look back. Her blonde ponytail swayed as she breezed toward the kitchen, already calling for the kids, pretending I wasn't there. "Stay in your lane, Grandma," she tossed over her shoulder like a gum wrapper. I didn't say anything, not when the pain flared up in my wrist from the tray wobbling, not when my heart started its slow, familiar thump of quiet fury. I just stood there for a beat too long, blinking at the dusty glass of the screen. Behind her, Derek stood by the fridge, watching the whole thing unfold like it was bad weather, a shrug and a hoodie. "She's just overwhelmed, Ma," he muttered, eyes low. Then he opened the fridge door and disappeared behind it, overwhelmed. I backed down the 2 steps slowly, like someone leaving a hospital visit where they weren't welcome. The afternoon sun caught the edge of the flagstone path, too bright for early spring. I didn't hear a single apology, not even a call to come back. The tray was too heavy now. My hands shook more than I wanted them to. I carried it back down the side path and around to the garage door, the long way in, like a tenant avoiding the landlord. My room, technically the guest suite, was down the hall from the laundry closet. Once, I'd picked the room for its quiet. Now it felt like a boxed-in life, a corner of the house I'd owned since Reagan was in office. My lane, as she called it. They'd paved over it with convenience and entitlement. I closed the door behind me gently and set the tray on my nightstand. The sandwich had gone limp. The soda was warm. I sat down without touching either. On the wall, my wedding photo hung slightly crooked. I didn't straighten it. I waited until the quiet held, then reached under the bed, pulling out the black fireproof safe. The code was still the same. My husband's badge number. Inside, under the folders and bank papers, sat the deed. My name was on it. First. I ran my fingers across the ink. Margaret Louise Hollis, full legal owner, no cosign, no addendums, no asterisks. They had moved in 2 years ago after Derek got laid off from his second contractor job, said it was temporary, said they'd help with utilities. That lasted 6 months. Then came the laundry in the hallway, the fights that shook the upstairs, the silence at dinner when Shannon wouldn't pass the salt. I had given them shelter, a soft place to land, and they had turned me invisible. I stood slowly and opened the window just a crack. The wind carried the sound of the kids laughing in the backyard, unaware. I closed my eyes. The scent of cut grass drifted in, my own lawn still trimmed every Friday by a service I paid for. The world was still mine. They'd just started pretending otherwise. I locked the safe and slid it back under the bed, the weight of it comforting. Then I whispered aloud, not to anyone in particular, not even myself. "This is still my house." I reached for my sandwich, took one firm bite, and smiled as I chewed. And I know how to open a door, too. You can't be walked on when you remember you own the floor, and I remembered it the moment I watched Shannon toss my sandwich in the trash the next day like it was leftovers she didn't ask for. That memory followed me like a shadow into the cool air of Boone and Associates Realty, tucked between a vape shop and a shuttered dry cleaner. Carla Boone stood when I walked in. Same short bob, same firm handshake, only now she wore reading glasses on a red beaded chain that matched her lipstick. "Margie Hollis," she said, smiling like I'd just come back from war. "You've still got that walk like you're delivering mail in a blizzard." "Still know the shortcuts, too," I said, and it was only half a joke. She motioned me into her office, and I noticed how quiet she kept it. No desk clutter, no idle chit-chat from the front. Just the scent of coffee and furniture polish, and a wall of binders neatly labeled by street name. I didn't sit right away. "I need to know one thing, Carla," I said, my voice steady. "Am I still the only one on that title?" She blinked once, then nodded. "I checked last night when I saw your message. No additions, no transfers. It's just you. Clear as the sky before a tornado." I sat. The silence after her words was heavier than I expected, a strange, slow exhale of something I hadn't realized I was holding in for months. "Good," I said. "Then I want it listed. Quietly. No signs. No open house. No neighbors knowing until they see a truck in the driveway." Carla leaned back in her chair, studying me, not like a friend, but like a pro assessing a slope before the climb. "You want fast?" "I want silent," I replied. "And final." She gave a short nod. "There's a private network. No marketing, just vetted cash buyers looking for solid bones in legacy neighborhoods. They want charm, not sparkle. Houses with real stories in the walls." "This one's got stories," I said. "Some of them kind." Carla slid a legal pad toward me. "We'll need your driver's license, the title copy, and anything with liens or back taxes." "No liens. No debts." I reached into my purse and handed her a manila folder I'd prepped last night. Deed copy, utility accounts, even the original blueprints my husband saved like gospel. She raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You don't come halfway to a decision like this, do you?" I didn't smile. "I should have done it the first time she slammed that door." Carla tapped her pen against the pad, the only sound in the office. "You're not mad," she said finally. "I mean, you are. But this isn't anger. It's cleanup." "That's exactly what it is." I looked her in the eye. "I've been treated like a temporary inconvenience in my own home. They turned my hospitality into a sentence." Carla glanced toward her computer and clicked a few keys. "Then let's give you the keys to something else. Good news. There's already interest. Quiet buyers love this zip code. And there's one, retired judge, lives 2 blocks over, who's been waiting for something like your place." I didn't breathe. Carla continued, voice steady. "He wants a walkthrough this week, says he's not afraid of tenants with tempers." I leaned back in the chair, pulse steady as a held note. "Then I'll make sure he sees the house at its best." I heard the click before I saw it, a sharp, metallic snick, like a punctuation mark on a sentence I hadn't realized Shannon was writing. The kitchen door, my own kitchen, with the linoleum I picked out in '92, and the window herb garden I kept alive through 2 droughts, now had a deadbolt. A shiny brass one that hadn't been there the night before. Taped just below it, in Shannon's sharp handwriting, was a note on pink stationery. "You have your own snacks. Let's keep the peace." S, no Mom, no Marge, just S, like she was the head of a department. I stood there a moment, fingers grazing the cool metal of the lock, the silence around me louder than any insult. The hallway smelled faintly of cinnamon oatmeal and whatever cheap perfume Shannon wore when she wanted to feel powerful. I peeled the note off without tearing it, walked slowly back to my room, and sat at my desk. I opened my journal, leather-bound, worn at the corners, and pressed the note flat between 2 pages. A record. Then I turned to a blank page and wrote in careful script, "Groceries for sweet mini fridge milk, half-gallon, boiled eggs, cheese cubes, grapes tuna packets, instant coffee." I kept the pen moving even as my hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, from clarity. That afternoon, I drove myself to the grocery store. I filled my cart methodically. Shannon wasn't home. Off somewhere posting quotes about boundaries and energy on her Instagram, I imagined. Back home, I unpacked everything into my mini fridge and the drawer I kept locked. I brewed a single cup of instant coffee and sipped it slowly, watching the steam curl in the sunlight. I started mailing things out the next day. A necklace from my wedding day wrapped in an old scarf, my husband's cufflinks, a few of the silver spoons we never used still shining under the tarnish. Each box went to my sister Lydia in Arizona, labeled only private. She didn't need a backstory. She'd know. Shannon laughed when she caught me wrapping the 3rd package. "What?" Mailing yourself to Florida one piece at a time? She said in front of the kids. Derek's youngest, Noah, looked up from his tablet. Grandma, are you going somewhere? I smiled gently. Just sending old things where they'll be safe. Shannon laughed again, louder this time. You always were dramatic. I didn't reply. I tightened the twine and sealed the box with calm, measured fingers. That night, I rearranged the guest room next to mine, fluffed the pillows, Windexed the windows, vacuumed the corners, and lit one of the lavender candles I kept for quiet moments. It didn't smell like desperation. It smelled like preparation. By the third day, the kitchen stayed locked, the notes still gone, and Shannon had taken to blasting music while she cooked, some smug playlist of pop, country, and motivational podcasts. She strutted in and out of the main hallway like a homeowner on parade, but I kept to my rhythm. I drank coffee at dawn. I moved boxes from closet to staging area. I labeled drawers with discreet stickers, not included, family heirloom. I replaced the burnt-out bulb in the hallway light. Control didn't always come with noise. Sometimes it wore slippers. It was late Wednesday evening when I found her. I had stepped out for 5 minutes, just to drop a letter in the blue USPS box at the corner. When I returned, the front door was open, the hall light off. My bedroom door, which I always shut, was ajar. The sound of rummaging was soft but unmistakable. I pushed the door open fully. Shannon was crouched at my dresser, one hand deep in the top drawer. My drawer, her other hand clutched one of my scarves. She turned fast, startled, but tried to play it cool. I was just looking for aspirin. Thought maybe you had a stash. Her cheeks were flushed. Her eyes didn't meet mine. I said nothing. Just walked forward and calmly opened the drawer next to her hand. I pulled out a fresh sheet of packing paper and laid it flat on the bed. Bathroom cabinet has the aspirin, I said softly. But if you're looking for something else, it's probably already gone. She blinked. And for the first time since they moved in, she didn't have a comeback. That morning, Shannon barely looked up from her phone when I said, Someone's coming by to check the boiler. Shouldn't take long. She huffed, like I'd interrupted an important diplomatic mission on Instagram. Whatever, she mumbled, tapping furiously. Just don't let them track in dirt. I nodded. Of course. Then I wiped down the foyer tiles until they gleamed, laid a fresh towel by the side entrance for Carla's boots, and arranged a small plate of lemon cookies in the sunroom. Not too much, just enough to make a home feel remembered. At 11:02 a.m., the doorbell rang. I opened it before the second chime. Carla stood in a crisp blazer, her dark hair tied back tight, expression unreadable but steady. Beside her was a tall, spare man in a wool coat and pressed jeans. His eyes, pale blue behind wire-rimmed glasses, scanned the entryway with quiet reverence. This is Eli March, Carla said. Judge, retired, still keeps a gavel on his shelf. Eli smiled. Force of habit. Mind if we take a look around? Of course not, I said, stepping back. From the kitchen, Shannon yelled, Can you shut the door? It's freezing. I did. Slowly. We started in the den. Eli ran his fingers along the mantel, nodding. These aren't faux beams, are they? Real oak, original to the house. We kept them sealed. Good bones, he murmured. This house has a story in the walls. In the living room, the fireplace still held the faintest scent of pine ash from winters long gone. Carla flipped through a folder quietly, while Eli studied the trim near the stairs. No Derek, not even a footstep overhead. Shannon stayed planted at the kitchen island, earbuds in, clacking nails on her phone like she was scoring a game. Carla said nothing, just kept walking. She was good at pretending things were invisible when they didn't matter. We moved toward the sunroom, and I felt the light change. The big windows caught the noon sun just right, warming the carpet and bouncing soft shadows across the furniture. The lemon cookies sat untouched on the corner table. Eli paused, soaking it in. You sit here in the mornings? He asked. Every morning since '89. He nodded. You can always tell when a home's been lived in properly. This isn't just walls, it's shelter. That landed harder than I expected. I swallowed and stepped aside while Carla set the folder on the coffee table. "This is the offer," she said. 10% over asking, all cash, immediate close. I didn't speak right away. "What's the timeline?" I asked, though I already knew. Carla glanced toward the hallway, just long enough to make a point. "They can close in 7 business days, full possession, no contingencies." Eli spoke softly. "I've seen too many families forget who held the roof up in the hard years. I'd be honored to be the next steward of this place." It took me a full breath before I could respond. "Then it's yours." Carla handed me a slim folder, labeled in clean blue ink. "Notice to occupants, 30 days to vacate." "Just say when," she said. I took the folder, still warm from her hand, and tucked it under my arm like a newspaper. Before I could respond, Carla leaned in and added quietly, "Just for me. We've done this before. Hostile family tenants. You're not the first. Or the last." That was the moment something shifted. Not anger. Not revenge. Just certainty. Cold and clean. I stood a little straighter. At 5:12 a.m., I was already kneeling in front of the cedar chest at the foot of my bed, arms deep in the soft folds of memory. The rest of the house was asleep, quiet, like a secret. I moved carefully, unwrapping lace doilies I hadn't displayed in years, tucking them into tissue-lined boxes one at a time. Every sound seemed sharper in the early dark, the slow creak of old hinges, the soft tear of tape pulling from the roll. The scent of cedar clung to my hands, mixed with the faint trace of the lavender sachets my mother used to stitch from handkerchief scraps. I paused over a faded photo album, one Derek made me for Christmas in 1994, back when he still thought I was magic. By the time the house stirred with footsteps and slamming doors, I'd already sealed 2 boxes and pushed them under the bed. I didn't label them. I didn't have to. After breakfast, theirs, not mine, I called the title office from the landline in the laundry room. Still had it memorized from the days when you had to write numbers in pen, not screens. "Hi there," I said, calm and clipped. "Margaret Hollis. I'd like to expedite a title transfer. I have full ownership and a power of attorney form on file from Carla Boone's office." The woman on the other end paused, then asked, "You expecting pushback?" "Not from anyone that matters," I replied. By Thursday, I'd boxed up 3 more drawers and had started wrapping picture frames in old t-shirts. At dawn, I removed my husband's old Air Force medals from the hallway wall and carefully slipped them into a red velvet pouch. Friday morning, Shannon noticed. She walked past my room, stopped, then doubled back. "What's this?" she said, voice syrupy. "Spring cleaning or something else?" She eyed the stack of boxes like they were explosives. I could feel her tone trying to dig beneath my calm. I straightened up from where I'd been folding a quilt and met her gaze, smile gentle. "Just organizing." She laughed, sharp and bright like a knife edge. "You're not going anywhere. I mean, come on, who would take you?" The silence after her words was thick, not angry, just loaded. I smoothed the corner of the quilt and placed it inside a box without breaking eye contact. "Well, someone took you, didn't they?" Her smile faltered for just a breath. She sniffed, scoffed, and walked away, calling for one of the kids. I taped the box shut slowly, like a goodbye to the version of myself that would have let that comment fester. That night, I waited until the house was dark. My printer hummed softly, the only light a dim desk lamp as I fed thick white paper through the tray. Notice to vacate, 30 days. 3 copies, sealed in ivory envelopes. No return address. I held one to my chest for a moment, not out of sentiment, but weight. The kind of paper that could split time into before and after. A text buzzed on my phone. "Carla. Closing confirmed. Buyer wiring in full by Monday. You're in the clear." I stared at it for a long time before I allowed myself to smile. Then I left the 3 envelopes in the drawer of the hallway table. Quietly, no ceremony, just placed them in a neat row, like good manners. On the way back to my room, I passed the locked kitchen door, the one Shannon still hadn't removed. It gleamed under the hallway light like a joke with no punchline. Back in my room, I pulled the lock kit from my drawer, the one I'd bought at the hardware store 2 weeks ago and kept wrapped in a dish towel. I installed the deadbolt on my door in silence. The final click echoed in the small room like a seal closing. Then I turned the key. They laughed when I said nothing. They rolled their eyes when I didn't argue. They mocked me in front of the grandkids like I was just an extra in a play they had rewritten. But silence has edges, and mine had finally sharpened. At 5:43 a.m., I padded barefoot to the kitchen, the floor cool against my soles. The hallway was dim, quiet except for the hum of the fridge behind Shannon's precious locked door. I stood still for a moment, listening for footsteps. Nothing. I placed the 3 envelopes on the center of the kitchen table, neatly spaced like they belonged in a gallery. Each one bore a name in my clean, cursive hand: Shannon, Derek, household copy. Then I turned, walked back down the hall, and poured myself a cup of coffee from the little machine in my room. The one I bought after she accidentally donated my old percolator. It wasn't until almost 11 a.m. that I heard it. Shannon's shriek. At first, it was muffled behind the walls, then louder, like a siren without a direction. "What the hell is this?" Footsteps thundered down the hallway. A chair scraped violently across the kitchen tile. Cabinet doors slammed open. Then came the heel strikes, fast and uneven. She burst into my doorway without knocking. "You think this is funny?" she shouted, waving the envelope like it had personally insulted her. Her face was blotchy, fury already bubbling into tears. "You can't evict us. This is illegal." Behind her, Derek hovered, eyes wide, arms folded like he'd wrapped himself in confusion and couldn't shake free. I looked at Shannon calmly. "Check the title." She sputtered, mouth opening and closing like she had too many insults queued up to pick just one. Derek stepped forward, voice gentler. "Mom? Come. On. Where are the kids supposed to go? School's still in session, they've got finals coming up. You're really going to do this to them?" "To them?" I asked, eyes narrowing just slightly. "You mean the children who've watched you all ignore me, belittle me, lock me out of my own kitchen? You mean the ones I've fed and driven to school and tucked in when you couldn't be bothered?" "That's not fair," he said, voice faltering. "No," I said, "it's not. And I've lived with that imbalance long enough." Shannon's arms crossed so tightly her fingers went white. "You're just bitter. This is revenge, plain and simple." I stood. "Wrong," I said softly. "This isn't revenge, it's correction." Her breath caught. That word settled between us like dust after a collapse. Final. Undeniable. Behind her, Derek looked like he wanted to say something else, but then my phone rang. I picked it up off the dresser without breaking eye contact. "Carla," I answered, voice calm. "Go ahead." She didn't bother with pleasantries. "Funds cleared, wire posted early. Buyer's agent has possession paperwork. The house is no longer in your name, Marge." I smiled just enough for Shannon to notice. "Thank you," I said, then hung up. Shannon took a step back. "What did she say?" I reached over and gently tapped the edge of her eviction notice, still clutched in her hand. "It's not yours anymore." Sunday afternoon, Derek knocked on my door for the first time in weeks, a soft, hesitant rhythm, the kind people use when they know they're walking into something delicate. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we talk?" "All of us." I opened the door just enough to see the kids standing behind him in the hallway, Maya clutching a stuffed bear by the arm, Noah balancing a juice box between 2 fingers like a peace offering. Shannon stood at the end of the line, arms crossed, mascara slightly smudged for effect. I nodded once. "Living room, 10 minutes." By the time I arrived, they'd arranged themselves carefully, kids on the couch, Shannon in the middle, Derek in the chair across from her. No one in the recliner. That was my late husband's spot. Still is. No one dares. I walked in with a mug of tea and no expression, sat down slowly, waited. Shannon spoke first, her voice trembling, though not from emotion, from effort. Mom, she corrected herself. "This whole thing has been a shock. I'm still processing." I sipped my tea. "I've been struggling with depression," she added. "It's been hard, Losing jobs, managing the kids, living in someone else's house. It's my house, I said gently. That's not semantics. That's the truth. She blinked, lips parting, but no sound followed. Derek cleared his throat, tried to smooth the tension. We messed up, okay? But kicking us out like this, it's extreme. Maya's got finals coming. Noah's still seeing a speech therapist. We just need a little time to land somewhere stable. How long's a little? I asked without blinking. Until summer, he said. Maybe we could pay something. Partial rent. A gesture. I looked at him carefully. He meant it. In that way, people mean things after consequences arrive. Not before. You should have treated me like a person, I said. Not a utility. He flinched. I raised you to respect what you didn't earn, I continued, my voice steady. You all slept under my roof, ate from my fridge, and locked me out of my own kitchen. You didn't just forget who owns this house. You decided it didn't matter. Shannon tried again, her voice cracking now with something closer to real panic. I was overwhelmed. I didn't mean half of what I said. I was hurting. And you chose to pass that pain down, I said. Not once, repeatedly. I didn't know how to ask for help, she whispered, eyes glassy. You did ask, I said, the day you moved in. Maya, quiet until then, shifted on the couch. Her small hand slipped into her backpack and pulled something out. A folded paper, floral stationery, carefully creased. She crossed the room and placed it in my lap. I opened it slowly. Thank you, Grandma. I see you. I'm sorry they didn't. Maya. I looked at her, and she gave a tiny nod. Her shoulders were tight like she'd been bracing for impact. I reached out and took her hand just for a moment. Then I stood. You have 28 days now, I said, folding the note into my pocket. Not 30. Derek stood too. You're shortening it? I looked toward the window, where the wind stirred the top of the oak tree my husband planted the year Derek was born. No, I said. You did that when you made this a performance instead of an apology. They moved slower packing than they did slamming my door. It was like watching molasses pretend to be ambition. Half-hearted box lifting, exaggerated size, a lot of staring at walls like maybe sympathy would appear in the sheetrock. Shannon posted a black and white photo on Facebook that morning, a moody filter over our front steps with the caption, Please pray for us. Our home is being taken unjustly. A broken heart emoji and the hashtag family under fire sealed the performance. By noon, 3 neighbors had texted me. Everything okay over there? Saw Shannon's post, praying for your family. Did something happen with the house? I forwarded the last one to Carla. She called right away. You want to respond? No, I said, calm as still water. They can wonder. Good, she replied. Dignity wins, always. By the 3rd day, a few boxes had finally made it to the living room, crookedly packed, overflowing, as if even cardboard didn't want to hold their mess. The kids looked dazed, carrying toys in and out like it was a game without rules. Shannon's tone had changed too. Gone were the jabs and the slammed doors. Now it was softness with edges. Dinner's almost ready, she said one night, poking her head into my room. Thought I'd cook for everyone. Chicken casserole. Your favorite, right? I didn't flinch. Sounds lovely. At 6 p.m., I sat at the table quietly as Shannon scooped spoonfuls of cheesy chicken onto my plate with a little too much flourish. She poured me a glass of sweet tea, folded my napkin for me like she was auditioning for Grace. I ate every bite, then stood, thanked her softly, rinsed my dish, and returned to packing my own dishes. Bone-white porcelain, rimmed in blue, a set from my wedding registry that had survived 2 tornado warnings and 35 Thanksgivings. Shannon watched from the hallway, the serving spoon still in her hand like a question she forgot how to ask. That night, I sat in bed and booked them a U-Haul online. I used a prepaid card, scheduled pickup 3 days before the deadline, and covered the deposit. No note, no mention, just done. They would either take the rope or trip over it. The next afternoon, I overheard Derek on the phone, his voice low, his pacing tight. He walked circles through the den, rubbing the back of his neck like he could knead away panic. No, We filled everything out, he said. Yeah, with cosigner, but yeah, I know about the eviction, but it's not like we... A pause. I understand. Okay. Thank you anyway. He hung up slowly. I didn't move from my seat in the sunroom, folding newspaper around a crystal vase I hadn't used since 2012, but I heard the quiet thunk of his phone hitting the table. He stepped into the room a few minutes later, slower than usual. There was no anger left in his eyes, just fatigue, worn down to the threads. They denied our application, he said. The apartment near the middle school. Said it's the eviction. I met his gaze. I'm not surprised. You knew it'd stick on our record? He asked. I folded the next layer of newspaper and placed the vase gently into the box. Actions leave footprints, I said. You don't get to be shocked by where they lead. He sat down on the couch, head in his hands. The silence stretched long between us. Not angry, not pleading, just real. Some things you pack, some things you bury. I started at the baseboards, not because they needed attention, but because no one else ever looked there. Dust tells a story when no one's listening, and this house, my house, had plenty to say. A yellow legal pad rested in my hand, page lined with columns: keep, leave, offer to buyer. I moved room by room with quiet precision, labeling with sticky notes and a red felt-tip pen. One tag per object, like a curator taking inventory of a life lived fully and survived completely. The floral armchair in the corner of the sunroom? Keep. Derek used to sit there while I read him Charlotte's Web, back when he still believed barns were magical and mothers had answers. The secondhand bookshelf Shannon overloaded with scented candles and cluttered inspirational signs? Leave. Let it be someone else's reclamation project. The couch? Offer. I never liked it anyway. Derek picked it out. Shannon called it transitional chic. It always sank too fast and smelled like artificial linen. I paused in the hallway by the coat closet and dropped to my knees, prying up the warped floorboard I knew by heart. It gave with a familiar groan, revealing the hidden box tucked deep in the shadows, still wrapped in the oilcloth my husband insisted on using, even though I told him duct tape would do. I peeled it open and breathed him in. Aged cedar, a faint trace of tobacco, and something old and metallic like time itself. Inside, his military medals neatly pinned on black velvet, his watch still set to the time he wore it last, a photo of us, young and foolish, on the steps of the courthouse where we said yes with trembling hands and empty pockets. I held the watch to my ear, still ticking. I carried the box into the living room, placed it on the coffee table, and walked to the record player near the fireplace. Another thing Shannon had mocked. She still plays vinyl, she'd sneered once during a dinner party, wine glass in hand, like it's charming instead of tragic. I found the sleeve. Immediately. Sam Cooke, You Send Me. Our wedding song, the one he'd sung off-key as we danced under borrowed string lights in a borrowed VFW hall. The needle scratched, then settled. The melody floated through the room like a memory-given breath. Software. Warm. Unapologetically sentimental. I cleaned while it played, folding linens that still carried the scent of lavender and starch. I polished the windows. I unhooked the living room clock, the one Shannon called tacky every chance she got. It had been a wedding gift from my aunt. Still ticked, even if the chimes lagged. Still mine. Then my phone buzzed. Carla. Buyer wants to know if you're keeping the piano. I stared at it for a moment, then typed back, yes. I walked into the dining room, ran my hand across the worn mahogany top of the upright piano, and smiled at the fingerprints Maya had left behind after her last practice. In my room, I packed a single shoebox. Inside, the thank you card from Maya, a pressed rose from my husband's memorial service, the hospital bracelet from Derek's birth, the brass doorknob from our first apartment, and one of my own old mail badges. I closed the lid gently and wrote across it in marker, Dignity, retrieved. As I set the box on the nightstand, a low rumble vibrated through the floor, the kind of sound that makes you freeze mid-breath. I moved to the window and pulled the curtain aside. A large white moving truck was backing slowly into the driveway, its wheels crunched over gravel. No logo, no phone number. It wasn't mine. The truck idled in the driveway, engine rumbling low like a growl. Diesel fumes drifted into the morning air, mixing with the sharp scent of cardboard and cold sweat. The driver leaned against the side mirror, arms crossed, chewing gum like he'd seen this scene play out more than a few times. Shannon emerged first, carrying a laundry basket full of tangled chargers, throw pillows, and what looked like half a box of protein bars. Her eyes were red, makeup smeared like war paint left too long in the rain. She sniffed dramatically, setting the basket down with a thud before turning to glare at the house like it might flinch. "I hope you're proud of yourself," she snapped, loud enough for the driver and half the neighborhood to hear. "Throwing your family out like trash. Some legacy." She turned, wiped her nose on her sleeve, and began dragging another box down the steps. Derek followed behind her, quieter, carrying a duffel in one hand and Noah's car seat in the other. He looked older, smaller somehow, like the last few weeks had chipped away the leftover polish adulthood hadn't already eroded. He paused at the base of the steps, looked up at me where I stood on the porch, spine straight, arms folded, the morning breeze tugging softly at the hem of my sweater. "You really meant it," he said, not accusing, not pleading, just acknowledging a truth that had taken him too long to recognize. "It was always real," I replied, voice even. "You just ignored it." He looked down, then nodded once. Noah came trotting up behind him, dragging a plastic backpack covered in cartoon stickers. "Bye, Grandma," he mumbled. Then, after a pause, "Can I visit sometime?" I smiled and crouched just enough to meet his eyes. "We'll see, sweetheart. Be good for your dad." From the far side of the truck, Maya appeared. She held a pillow under one arm, a tangle of her mother's scarves trailing from the other. Her eyes were unreadable, cautious. But when she reached the porch, she hesitated, then threw her arms around my waist. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for how she talked to you. I saw it. All of it." I hugged her back, letting my hand rest against her hair. "I know, honey. You saw more than they thought." Shannon stomped up the steps one last time, her tone shrill. "You're ruining our family, Marge. You're going to die bitter and alone in this house, and we'll be the ones who tried." I looked her square in the eye, voice calm as lake glass. "I'm just closing a chapter. You're the one who kept writing over the ending." She scoffed, turned away, and barked at Derek to move faster, the clock's ticking. It was, just not in the direction she thought. Within the hour, the last box was shoved into the back of the truck. The driver slammed the cargo door shut, gave a half-hearted wave, and climbed into the cab. The engine revved, the tires crackled down the gravel, then silence. Not the kind that holds its breath, the kind that exhales. Inside, the walls felt taller, lighter, even the shadows looked softer. I turned to find Carla standing in the doorway, a folder in one hand, keys in the other. She smiled and handed them to me. "It's done. House is fully yours again." I took the keys, cold metal warming quickly in my palm. Carla tilted her head. "So, Marge, what now?" The house was quiet. Not because they were gone, but because peace had finally returned. No raised voices through thin walls, no slammed doors rattling. Picture frames, no toddler tantrums competing with Shannon's late-night phone calls about manifesting better energy. Just silence, clean, full-bodied silence. I stepped barefoot across the living room, the hardwood warm from the late morning sun. My feet made soft creaks on boards I'd swept and waxed myself at dawn. I paused where Shannon used to stomp, always in heels, always dramatic, and let my heel press gently into the floor. No echo of her remained. In the foyer, I took down the coat rack she insisted on mounting crooked, said it gave the space casual charm. I replaced it with a small antique mirror from my mother's farmhouse, cleaned the smudges, and hung it level with the horizon. Then I opened the front door, not in haste, but in ceremony. The hinges groaned with that familiar rasp. Not angry, just old. I pulled out the small tin of oil from under the kitchen sink, dipped a cotton cloth, and leaned in. I didn't oil the hinges because they squeaked. I did it because I could. Because they were mine to quiet now. The afternoon light slanted golden through the trees when Carla arrived, box in hand. She stepped onto the porch with her usual grace, then paused and looked down. "Still using that wipe your paws mat, huh?" she said with a grin. I nodded toward the box. "That better be what I think it is." Carla bent down and pulled out a thick, clean welcome mat, a soft charcoal gray with simple white lettering, "Your place, your peace." I laid it out with both hands, smoothing the edges flat against the stoop. We stood there a moment, admiring how something small could feel so final. Later, I tied on my apron and turned on the old oven. The smell of buttermilk and cornmeal rose through the house, warm and familiar, wrapping around the banister and curling through the open windows. I hadn't baked his favorite cornbread in years, not since the last holiday before he passed. Shannon never liked the smell, said it was too heavy. I set 2 plates at the table. One stayed empty. His. I ate slowly. No need to rush a quiet meal, no one asking for seconds they didn't help make. When I was done, I walked back to my room and slid the final box onto the bed. It was labeled in thick marker, "Self." Inside were the parts of me I'd packed away first, when I still thought being accommodating was the same as being kind. A sun hat from my first solo trip to Savannah, the watercolor of the house I painted before Derek was born. A worn paperback of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn with a note inside. "To the one who keeps the roots strong." I unpacked slowly, laying each item out like an apology I no longer owed. Then I climbed to the attic. The bulb buzzed dimly overhead, dust swirling in the thin light. In the far corner, under an old trunk, I found it. The family photo Shannon had torn in half last winter. Said she didn't like how she looked in it. My husband's smile had been right down the middle, now jagged and folded. I carried it downstairs, placed it on the back patio's rusted fire pit, and lit the edge. The flames licked it fast. For once, she vanished quietly. As the last curl of ash lifted into the Oklahoma sky, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Carla's name lit up the screen. "Hi," I answered. Her voice was low but not apologetic. "The buyers want to move in early. They're asking if you can be out in 48 hours. They wanted mercy, but only after they exhausted cruelty. After every slammed door, every cold shoulder, every stolen inch of dignity, they finally remembered how to beg. But I wasn't offering salvation, just the facts." The hotel parking lot shimmered in the midday heat, the kind of thick Oklahoma air that made your lungs feel like they were drinking soup. The Super 8 sign buzzed above me as I pulled in, its plastic panels stained and faded like everything else in their temporary life. Shannon stood out front, arms crossed, sunglasses too large for her face, shielding whatever was left of her pride. Derek leaned against the pillar near the ice machine, eyes hollow, hands shoved deep into his hoodie pocket. I stepped out of my car, slowly, envelope in hand. "New paperwork," I said simply. "Buyers are taking possession early. You've got 48 hours. Shannon's sunglasses slid down just enough for me to see her eyes widen, then narrow. "You've got to be kidding," she spat. "You can't do this. We already moved out. What more do you want? Blood." "You didn't move out," I replied. "You relocated. There's a difference." She lunged forward and snatched the envelope from my hand, ripped it open without reading the name. "Unreal," she muttered, before crumpling the letter and throwing it hard at my feet like it might explode on impact. "You witch. You actually want to see us fail. You want to see your grandkids homeless." Behind her, Derek finally pushed off the pillar. "Shannon, stop." "No, she's smug. Look at her," Shannon yelled. "She came here just to twist the knife." I looked at Derek. He met my gaze, tired, but clear. "It's over, Shannon. Just stop. We've got 2 days. Let's use it." She spun toward him, disbelief in every movement. "You're siding with her?" "No," he said softly. "I'm just done pretending this is someone else's fault." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I turned to go, stepping over the wadded-up eviction letter on the pavement. Behind me, Shannon shouted, "What do you even get out of this, Marge?" I stopped, turned halfway. "Peace," I said, "and a clear threshold." Back at the house, the air felt lighter, like even the walls had started to exhale. I called the locksmith before I took off my shoes. By the time he arrived, I had a fresh glass of iced tea on the porch and the extra keys waiting in a plastic sandwich bag. He worked quickly, replacing every lock, front, back, garage, even the shed out back where Derek used to fix his bike chain. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. By sunset, Carla pulled into the driveway in her silver sedan. She walked up carrying a box about the size of a shoebox, tucked neatly under her arm. "Compliments of the buyer," she said. "Full security system, smart panel, cameras, window sensors, everything short of lasers." "Appreciate it," I said. "Let's put one by the kitchen window first." It took an hour, but by the time she left, the panel near the front door blinked green. Armed. A new kind of silence settled in, not the fragile kind, the fortified kind. But as I made my way upstairs, brushing my fingertips along the banister I'd polished just yesterday, I noticed a faint flicker through the curtain. A car. Parked across the street. No headlights, no motion. Just there, watching. Even dogs learn when they're no longer welcome. They hang their heads, tail low, and find somewhere else to lie down. But people? People test the gate twice. Sometimes 3 times, especially when they think you might still be soft on the inside. I sat by the front window, a quilt draped over my legs, and a mug of Earl Grey warming both palms. The security panel beside me blinked green, armed, stable. I didn't need it to feel safe. I needed it to feel unbothered. The house smelled of lemon oil and wood polish, with a faint trace of cornbread lingering from the afternoon. The porch light hummed softly against the quiet night, casting golden shapes across the front walk. I didn't have the television on, didn't have a book open, just watched. At 11:56 p.m., I saw movement. A figure emerged from the edge of the street, slow and hesitant. No car doors, no voices, just the crunch of gravel under deliberate steps. I tightened my grip on the mug. Not fear, just preparation. My eyes tracked the shadow as it approached the steps. One hand went to the rail. The other stayed at his side. A single knock. Then silence. I didn't move at first, let the moment hang there, suspended like a raindrop that never quite falls. Then I rose, slow and quiet, and cracked the door just enough to see the face behind the screen. "Hi, Ma," Derek said. His voice wasn't loud, not demanding, not smug or angry. It was deflated. No hoodie this time, no ball cap, just his face, raw and tired, framed by the porch light like he'd aged 5 years in 5 weeks. I didn't say anything, just held the door halfway open and waited. "I shouldn't have let her talk to you like that," he said, staring down at the welcome mat. "I should have stepped in a long time ago." I leaned against the frame, letting the cool air move past my cheek. "She made everything so loud," he continued. "And His voice broke. "I didn't want to fight about it. I thought staying quiet was keeping the peace." I took a slow sip from the mug. "You didn't stay quiet," I said finally. "You stayed comfortable." He nodded, shame painting his whole posture in a slouch. "Yeah," he murmured. "That's the truth." The porch creaked under his weight as he shifted his stance. "She always made it seem like you were the one making things tense, like you were dramatic, but it was her. I see it now, the way she cut you out of everything, treated you like a nuisance." He looked up then, eyes red-rimmed but open. "You didn't deserve that, and the kids didn't deserve to see it." A long pause bloomed between us, heavy with the pieces of years we'd left unsaid. I could feel the tea going cold in my hands, but I didn't care. "This was never about the house," I said, my voice steady. "It was about respect, about being seen as something more than a resource." He nodded again, slowly this time. "I know." Another beat passed. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. "Do I still get to be your son?" I stared at him, not with anger, not with sentiment, with the kind of clarity that only comes after a woman stops hoping to be treated better and starts insisting on it. "You'll always be my son, Derek," I said. Relief flickered across his face. "But not my dependent." He blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "if you want a relationship with me, one that means something, there are going to be terms, therapy, accountability, boundaries, and Shannon." I shook my head once. "She doesn't come with you. Not this time. Not ever again." He swallowed hard. I saw the fight behind his eyes, the part of him that wanted to argue, but it never made it to his mouth. "I understand," he said, almost whispering. "I'm willing." 3 days after our porch conversation, Derek returned. No text, no heads up, just the familiar hum of a truck engine in the driveway and the soft knock of someone no longer assuming they belonged inside. I opened the door without a word. He wore work gloves and had sweat on his brow, already lifting one of the boxes marked, "Tools, Keep." His posture was different this time, low center of gravity, shoulders set not in shame but in effort. He didn't ask if I needed help. He just started hauling things to the storage unit I'd rented out behind the bank. We didn't talk for the first half hour, just moved. A steady rhythm of silence and cardboard. It wasn't until he lowered the last box onto the tailgate that he spoke. "She's gone," he said. "Shannon took a flight to Phoenix 2 nights ago, her sister's place." I glanced at him. "Just like that?" He nodded. "She said she needed space." Truth is, I think she knew I wasn't following her this time. A long pause opened up between us, wide as the Oklahoma sky. "Is it over?" I asked. He didn't look at me when he answered. "I think it was over a long time ago. We just finally stopped pretending otherwise." Back inside, the kitchen felt warmer than usual, maybe because it was the first time in months someone sat at the table without expecting anything from me. I made grilled cheese and tomato soup, simple and steady, like the early years when he'd come home with scraped knees and too many questions. This time I set the plate in front of him and took the seat across. "You used to cut the crusts," he said with a faint smile. "You used to say they were the worst part." He took a bite and didn't speak again for several minutes. But something in the air had softened, steam rising off the bowl, the smell of sharp cheddar and rosemary bread, the quiet scrape of silverware against ceramic. When we finished, I stood, opened the drawer by the hallway, and pulled out a bundle of yellowing envelopes. "I kept these," I said, setting them in front of him. "Letters you wrote me in high school, after you failed your first math test, when you made varsity, the day after your dad died." He reached for one and unfolded it carefully, hands suddenly shaky. His eyes scanned the page like he was reading a stranger's handwriting. "I don't even remember writing this," he said. "I do." He set the letter down and blinked hard, looking at me like he was trying to locate the person who'd once written those words. "I lost a lot, didn't I?" "Not all of it," I said. "Not if you mean what you said on that porch." He nodded once, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I want to earn it back." "I know." I reached for my planner, flipped to the page with my medical directive paperwork. I pulled out the envelope and tapped it once before sliding it toward him. "I'm adding you back to my medical directive. Emergency contacts, hospital orders, the whole bit." He looked up, surprised. "What about the trust?" I shook my head gently. "Not yet. That kind of access has to be earned with consistency, not just apologies." He didn't argue, didn't flinch, just nodded again. "That's fair." The phone rang. I stood to answer it, Carla's voice crisp and clear. "Marge, got some good news. Buyer's final walkthrough was clean, and, surprise, they want to offer you the guest house out back. Permanent rental, $1 a month." I blinked, caught off guard. "They want me to stay?" "They said they'd rather have the soul of the place remain. Said you're part of the story." The sun filtered through the curtain of my new front window, throwing soft light across a room that finally breathed with me. No echoes of shouting, no shoes by the door that weren't mine, no chaos packed into corners I didn't control. The guest house was just 8 steps from the main house, but it felt like miles, a full circle with better lighting and no apologies. New floors, soft paint, French doors that opened onto a private patio with a small iron table I picked out myself. Peace, bordered by wild rosemary and fresh mulch. The key Carla gave me slid easily into the lock. No resistance, no stick, just click. Welcome home. That afternoon she dropped by with the final envelope. No fanfare, just quiet closure. "Everything's done," she said, handing me the thick manila folder. "The trust's been amended. You're the sole trustee now. Shannon's name is off, permanently, no reinstatement clause." I nodded once. "Good." She lingered a beat. "I'll have the new titles filed by Tuesday. Retirement accounts, insurance, the works." I walked her to the door, then stood under the quiet hum of the ceiling fan, flipping through the papers. Everything in ink and stamp. Everything final. Later, I sat at the tiny desk by the window and pulled out a fresh card from my stationery drawer. The paper was thick, pale cream with a pressed floral border. "Maya, you're the only one I trust with stories. The real ones. The hard ones. Keep them safe, and tell them gently when the time comes. Love always, Grandma." I sealed it and tucked it inside a cloth-bound journal. My next gift to her. Not now, but someday, when she was ready for the truths that didn't always come with heroes. Derek visited every other Sunday. He knocked now, always knocked. He brought coffee sometimes, books other times. Once, just silence. He didn't linger too long, didn't overstep. He sat on the patio and asked real questions, listened to answers that took time. He never mentioned Shannon again. She tried to reach me once. A letter, postmarked from Arizona, my name misspelled on the front, Marjorie instead of Margaret. I didn't open it, just walked it calmly to the fireplace in the main house, lit a match and dropped it in, watched the paper curl into nothing, let the last of her weight leave the room like smoke through an open flue. On the morning of my 74th birthday, I woke early. No phone calls, no fanfare, and that was fine. I stood barefoot in the kitchen, the tile cool under my heels, and sifted flour and sugar into a glass bowl. I cracked 2 eggs, beat them slowly, poured vanilla like memory, measured but generous. The smell of the cake filled every inch of the cottage. Sweet and soft, it bloomed through the open window like a blessing. I frosted it with buttercream, not too much, just enough to feel like celebration. 1 slice, 1 candle. I carried the plate to the patio table and lit the wick. The flame danced, then held, steady, unbothered by wind or time. I closed my eyes and breathed in. No wish, just acknowledgement. I was still here, and everything that wasn't meant to stay, wasn't. As the candle melted, I looked across the yard, past the herb beds and the tulips that had started pushing up near the fence line. The main house stood still. A little grayer now, a little emptier. But finally, it was full of new possibility.